In this segment, I'd like to talk about managing through bear markets. I entered this business in 1984, and if there's one thing that makes a significant impression on you, it's bear markets. Bear markets are very difficult, and the reason that most investors don't do nearly as well as the market when it comes to investing their portfolios, if they're investing in stocks, is bear markets. Bear markets scare us out of our portfolios. They cause us to make decisions that don't work for the long term but feel like the right decision to make in the short term. I'd like to go back and take a look at bear markets since the Second World War and talk about how it is that we can better manage our portfolios through these markets. In this slide, we've got a history of bear markets since the Second World War. And one of the first things to notice about bear markets is that they're as common as dirt. There's been 13 of them since the Second World War. They varied in duration. If we look at the first one, from 1946 to 1949, the market dropped 30%. It lasted about 3.5 years. And the S&P 500, which if you remember from our previous segment, stands at around 1,400 today. It was at the peak 19.3 points and at the trough 13.6 points. And we go through, there was another bear market that went from 1956 to 1957, another one in 61 to 62, and so on. These markets all had different characteristics, they had different causes, there was a different panic. And you may wonder why it is with all of this volatility and these losses. If you look at the return column, you can see losses of -30, the one that went from 1973 to 1974, the loss was 48%. The two most recent ones that we've experienced, the one in 2000 that lasted until 2002, there was a 49% decline in the S&P 500. The one that went from 2007 to 2009, there was a 57% decline in the S&P 500. So these are daunting events to live through, especially as an investor, and especially if you're a retired investor and you're looking to preserve your capital. No bear market feels average or even normal while you're going through it. It feels like the end of the world. And certainly this has been my experience. Whether it's the first one I experienced in 1987 or the last one that we went through in 2008 and 2009, and especially for an investor who's retired and you're looking to preserve your capital, the media is filled with stories about how this time it is going to be different from all the previous times, and it's unlikely that we're going to see a return to stable markets or climbing markets in the future. Going back to the slide where we're looking through the bear markets that went from 1946 through to present day, so a history of bear markets since the Second World War. One thing that you notice once you get past the declines of anywhere from -22% to or -20% to -57% is that there is a march of the index through these events. So if we go all the way back to 1946, the first line on this slide, you see the peak was 19.3 and the trough was 13.6. And we go through to the last line, and the peak was 1565 and the trough was 676. It doesn't really matter whether you were at the peak or the trough. If you had invested a long time ago, such as 1946, you have a large multiple of your money. And this is something that you see all the way through this chart, is that inevitably the market regains its previous peak and then keeps on going, which is what makes the market such a useful tool in preserving income against the effects of inflation. In this next slide, if we take away all of those intervening bear markets, you see the march of equities between bear markets. The move from the 1949 bottom of 13.6 to the present day peak of, well, 1565 was the peak in 2007, and again the S&P 500 is now closing back in on somewhere around 1,500 points at the moment.